MotoGP is the world's top-level motorbike racing series, where riders risk it all while racing side by side at crazy speeds, putting it all on the line and taking massive risks. And sometimes the risks don't pay off. You're watching Racers Reverie. These are the worst crashes in MotoGP history. First up is one of the craziest incidents ever seen in a motorbike race. The 2017 Moto3 crash at the French Grand Prix was a bizarre and chaotic crash involving almost half the grid. Riders thought that they were entering just another corner as usual, but out of nowhere, they found themselves in a bit of a slippery situation. Earlier in the race, another bike dropped a huge amount of oil on the track, and it was all over the tarmac at one of the highest speed corners. When the rest of the field came around, they were completely caught off guard by the treacherous oil. Out of nowhere, riders started to fall off their bikes left and right, in a crazy domino effect that eventually involved half of the field. The crash was so chaotic that it was hard to keep track of who was involved. Riders were sliding into each other, flying through the air, smashing into other riders and bikes, and crashing into the gravel trap, all completely out of control of their machinery. This was definitely one of the most chaotic and bizarre moments in motorbike racing history. The second crash on our list will definitely make you wince. It involves fan-favorite rider Marc Marquez when he took a very nasty tumble at the 2020 Spanish Grand Prix. Marquez was having a brilliant race after climbing from 18th to 3rd position in an epic display of skill, but what he didn't know was that he was about to go from hero to zero, because out of nowhere, with 4 laps left, disaster struck. Marquez lost the rear end of his bike in a massive moment. It violently catapulted him into the air, and he smashed hard off the ground in a very scary impact. He landed heavily on his right side, and his bike skidded across the track. Marquez bounced like a ragdoll, hitting almost every part of his body imaginable, and was flung through the gravel as commentators watched on in horror. Just as Marquez thought his ride through hell was over, he was hit on the head by his bike's wheel, inflicting even more damage.
Marc Marquez is down. Oh, he's gone again. Oh, that's a big crash. He's not saving that one. I hope he's all right, because that's a fast one.
Is that 4 again?
It's 4 again. It's caught him out once more.
He was badly hurt, and it was clear that the right side of his body was banged up. He was immediately taken to the medical center for surgery. The massive highside was one of the most spectacular and horrifying crashes in recent memory. It was so severe that he missed the remainder of the 2020 MotoGP season and was a major setback for his career. Now, when we think about frightening crashes, we usually think about sudden loss of control, crazy speed, and massive impacts. Well, this crash had all 3. Jack Miller's 160 mph crash during practice for the French MotoGP race in 2017 was one of the most jaw-dropping crashes ever. Miller was pushing hard to improve his lap times before qualifying, when suddenly he was taken for the ride of his life. While he was approaching a corner at over 160 mph, the front wheel on his bike became his arch-enemy, throwing his bike off balance and tossing him completely off the track. Before he knew what was happening, he was traveling flat out towards the wall with no control over his bike.
Oh dear, oh my God. Wow. Oh my golly. Jack Miller. Wow. Ah, lucky boy.
It made an absolutely huge impact with the wall, and he was instantly thrown off his bike, flipping multiple times in the air and making a massive impact with the ground. Miller slid across the track, straight towards the barrier, bouncing off it hard. The crash forced Miller to miss the rest of the weekend's action and remains one of the wildest moments in modern MotoGP. While we're talking about terrifying crashes, this one definitely had it all. The 2020 Austrian MotoGP crash was perhaps the craziest, most terrifying crash ever seen. The incident occurred on lap 2 of the race, while Johann Zarco and Franco Morbidelli were battling for position. As they approached turn 3 at almost 300 km/h, they suddenly made contact. Zarco's bike was catapulted wildly into the air, and at the same time, Morbidelli's bike crashed heavily onto the track in a surreal turn of events. Zarco's bike then took off up the hill, flying towards Valentino Rossi and Maverick Viñales, who were riding closely behind. The bike even split in two from the massive impact and shot up the track as if it was fired from a gun, straight into the path of oncoming riders.
Oh, a huge crash! Oh, goodness
That is
me!
Franco Morbidelli's Yamaha. We're going to have a red flag, no doubt about it. Johan Zarco. What on earth has happened there? It's on the fastest part of this Red Bull Ring circuit. Morbidelli's motorcycle went flying through turn number 3. I was wincing. I shut my eyes when Rossi came through.
Somehow, Rossi and Vinales were able to avoid every piece of bike and debris, but they just about missed. Morbidelli's bike hit a camera operator who was standing at the side of the track, who was taken to the hospital with serious injuries. This crash was a reminder of the massive dangers of motorcycle racing, and for many fans is the most terrifying accident ever in MotoGP. Outside involvement can often have a big influence on crashes, and this was certainly the case at the 2022 Moto2 Portuguese Grand Prix. As the race went on, the racing gods decided to spice things up, and out of nowhere a downpour of rain soaked the track and all hell broke loose. In one of the most dramatic moments of the championship, a group of riders barreled through turn 2 at over 160 miles per hour, but they were in for a surprise. The soaking track and the high-speed corner proved to be too much, and at over 160 miles an hour they were caught out by the rain, instantly losing control of their bikes. Their bodies bashed on the ground as they were flung from their bikes, and they slid across the track and through the gravel. They were still going at insane speeds thanks to the slipperiness of the surface, and they bounced multiple times off the track in a violent display of motorbike madness. As more bikes fell and bounced off each other, flames erupted to create a truly spectacular crash down in the Algarve. The incident included 11 riders, including some of the top contenders for the championship. A highside can often be the worst type of crash in motorbike racing, throwing drivers into the air and straight into danger. Luca Marini experienced just this in his brutal highside crash at the 2020 French MotoGP race. The crash happened while Marini, the champion leader, was battling for position with Sam Lowes. As he came under the Dunlop Bridge at the famous Le Mans circuit, he was sizing up Lowes for an overtake down the fierce hill, but out of nowhere he was completely caught off guard at high speed when he lost all control of the rear of his bike. He was viciously launched into the air in a crash that seemingly went on forever, with him twisting and turning in the air, almost like gravity had momentarily disappeared. He then landed heavily on his back and leg and slid down the hill at high speed for several seconds, as other riders tried to avoid both him and his bike.
Oh my God! Holy Mother of God.
He eventually came to a stop and was clearly injured from the grueling impacts that he had just suffered. Now, Marc Marquez is undoubtedly one of the top MotoGP riders of all time, having won 6 MotoGP World Championships, but along the way he has been involved in some very sizable crashes. So let's check out one of his biggest. During the warm-up session for the Indonesian GP in 2022, he suffered one of the most spectacular and frightening crashes ever seen in the sport. While taking a series of high-speed corners flat out, he was taken by surprise when the rear end of his bike stepped out in a huge way. He was thrown so high into the air that he managed to do a full head-over-heels flip before landing awkwardly on his head and back. His head took a big hit off the ground when he landed, and his body slid along the track in a very worrying way.
Tipsy did. Whoa! Wow! Oh, dearie me! Unbelievable! The rear tyre just letting go in the most spectacular fashion. That is, oh, dearie me.
Marquez was taken to a local hospital straight away for further checks, where it was revealed that he suffered a concussion. MotoGP medical staff declared him unfit to continue the weekend, and he was forced to sit out the race. Now, if you thought you had just seen the worst highside crash ever, you might want to think again. This next one is truly shocking and is sure to send chills down your spine. Lorenzo Baldassarri had an insane highside crash in the Moto2 qualifying session at Assen in 2017. It was one of the most horrific accidents ever seen, and fans feared the worst as they watched on in shock. Baldassarri was pushing to the max on a flying lap and was clearly on the edge of his bike's capabilities. When coming through an extremely fast corner, he touched the white line of the apex on the exit, causing his rear wheel to completely lose traction. Without warning, the bike high-sided, and off came Baldassarri in the wildest way possible. He was flung high into the air and landed heavily, with his head taking the biggest hit of all. His helmet smashed the ground so hard that it bounced his whole body back into the air. As he slid down the track, his bike followed him and smashed into him again on the ground, giving his head another huge blow. His visor even came off and he was knocked out from the crazy impact. The crash was so violent that the medical staff had to put a tent around him as they feared the worst, but luckily he survived this horrific incident. And with that, we have a collection of the worst MotoGP crashes of all time. These massive shunts are part of motorbike racing, but they always take us by surprise when they happen, as there is rarely any warning. It is one of the most dangerous sports on the planet, and crashes somehow add to the excitement as we see riders risking it all on the track. If you enjoyed this video, you'll love our last one about the worst NASCAR crashes ever, or maybe the one we posted of the worst Formula 1 crashes in history. Leave a comment and let us know which crash you thought was the worst, and tell us if we missed any. Please smash the like button and subscribe for more motorsports content. This has been Racers Reverie. See you in the next video.